I see the light everywhere I go. I see the light that'll lead me home.
My name is Jonathan Singletary. I'm an artist, a singer, songwriter, and a producer. I was 16 years old and I was at a school. I was accused of throwing something in the classroom that I had never stepped foot in, that I'd never seen the inside of. Throwing something that hit a girl in the eye, which then led to me not only just being accused, but then actually being charged with a misdemeanor battery. One kid inside who came out to ask who saw something or who did something and said the black kid did it. That led to me being charged, and when I wouldn't plea bargain, they bumped it up to a felony, and I was facing 4 years, all off of the word of one kid, a white kid, who went into his classroom and said the black kid did it, when I was walking with my teammate, my white teammate, the entire time, who knew and said repeatedly that I had nothing to do with it, that we had nothing to do with it. And after a 9-month ordeal of arraignments, fingerprinting, tens of thousands of dollars spent by my parents on lawyer fees, it went to trial and I was acquitted. But that whole season of my life was incredibly traumatic for me, for my family. I had a lot of pent up anger, shame even, feeling guilt that it was only because of me and because of this thing I'd been put into that my parents were going through the heartache they were going through, and the ways in which it shaped me. Now as an adult, and really over the last 10 years, I look at the experience of other black men in this country who don't happen to come from the suburbs, don't have educated parents, who don't have the financial resources to fight injustice that goes on in this country. And my heart breaks every time I see a young kid from either Michael Brown to Trayvon or anybody else getting caught up in the system, because it's not fair and it's not justice. That experience, although there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of frustration, I also got the opportunity to see my church family come around me, my family come around me and show up in ways that completely blew me away and still do to this day, holding signs, writing letters, calling press to make sure that another young black kid wasn't railroaded because of the injustice and the racism in this country.
What's up, dude?
What up?
What's going on, man?
Living.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I appreciate you coming out today, having this conversation, giving us your time, obviously your wisdom. So what season of life are you in right now?
I guess it's a very real level up season in a lot of different ways. Like I am personally, and me and my wife are actually giving birth to a lot of things in this season.
Okay.
So it's and there are some parallel things happening in my like career, purpose, path that are like literally directly in line in terms of time frame as her pregnancy. And so it's just like everything's up. Everything is, my eyes are open, I'm up, my spirit's up, and I'm just like, it's like I've been thrown in the ring for real right now. So
and how are you handling that? How do you handle being thrown in the ring different ways?
I think I'm handling it well, and probably not like, as I'm in this journey and like so many times in my life, I always think about David. Like David, I feel like I'm so glad he's in the Bible. 'Cause I'm so glad that his story is written down, because it's like nothing that I'm going, I can always find a parallel to like getting thrown into something. I can always find a parallel between my life and David's life and David's journey. And like God prepares you. He prepares you in seasons of like down seasons of rest, seasons of struggle. And I feel like he's prepared me, and I like, not of my own doing, really. I've tried to be obedient. I try to be faithful. I always try to grow. But I think God's put me through certain things to prepare me for this very season. So I'm grateful for it.
How do you prepare for what you don't know? And what didn't you know in this season that was coming?
Oh man. It's a good question. I think kind of just deciding like what are your fundamental and foundational like areas of focus and your priorities.
Right.
And just trying to focus on those and like understanding that things are gonna come at you that you can't prepare for, but if you have the main thing and you keep the main thing, then once those things come at you, then you'll be prepared or at least able to adjust and shift. So for me, it's maintaining a relationship with God, like praying, worshiping, reading the word as much as I can. And I go in and out of my seasons of like when I'm doing it more consistently with more discipline, but I always have my mind towards like walking with God in whatever I'm doing.
Was that always something you knew you had to do? Or was there something in your life that said, if I don't walk closely with him, that's it?
No, there were a couple big turning points. One was when I was 25, and I was leaving grad school or cutting my grad school program short because I felt that I was being called to move more towards music. And this was like rounding the corner out of my prodigal son journey. I had spent like 4 years after going to college, like not really praying much, not reading the Bible, just like pretty disconnected from God. And once I knew that I was taking a risk and making a leap, I was like, I should probably figure out this whole relationship with God thing, because there's too much unknown out there for me. And I had that foundation from growing up in the church, but there's too much unknown out there for me to really feel like I can do this on my own. And in that same season, I got 2 DUIs, and just, so it's 2 DUIs and an uncertain career and future for the first time in my life. And I knew that I needed God, some form of a higher power to help me navigate what I was going through.
I think there's some human element to where we want to be God. We want to be in control. We want to know what's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening. It's not till we don't know. That I feel like we all go, oh, where do I go from here, right? And speaking of, I want to give context. You mentioned it earlier. You mentioned music. You're a singer, songwriter, producer. Open up for Bruno Mars. You've graced the stage of Afropunk. You started a social series, Piano and Prayer. That's a high level of success. And me knowing you, I know there's more to come. What is the cost behind that level of success that's invisible, that nobody can see?
It's funny. I think there's so much to talk about around that word success, first of all. But I think that everything that, because I look at a bio or somebody says like the things that have happened, these are all moments, right? They're all moments that are like either in the lights or on the stage. And I think even if you look at the days after and before, even the hours after before some of those moments, Afropunk included, like there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of like self-doubt, uncertainty. There's a lot of like, how did I get here? Sometimes that imposter syndrome comes in. And then I think there's months, there's years of like questioning, should I even be on this path in music? Should I even should I do this anymore? Like, is this really gonna work out the way that I thought it was gonna work out? Like these glimpses that I've seen or heard from God about where I would end up and what was gonna happen with music, like, is it really happening? Is it going to happen? And that still happens with any great thing that's happening with music right now. Even I'm like, but is this really going to pan out into the next level? And there's doubt, there's fear, there's insecurity, and then there's a lot of work and a lot of like a lot of lost seasons as well,
Yeah.
like not knowing what the best thing to do is on any given day. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of that.
And you talked about success. I do think as a culture, we're starting to come to a place we're redefining success.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's career success, but I think where we're headed is having success, but also how you carry that success.
Mm-hmm.
What is that for you? Where are you at on the scale of carrying the success that you achieve, knowing you want more, or if you want more?
Yeah, I think that I define, when I think about success, like, it's hard for me to even look at the things that have happened in my career and say I'm successful. Even when, like, I know that I have succeeded in doing things,
Yeah.
and whether I've been paid or whether, like, you know, somebody who I really admire and respect has, like, said, you've succeeded in this.
Yeah.
I think that as part of keeping the main thing for me, honestly, the thing that I'm like, I'm most proud of, or most, like, I know that I've been successful in, is like my marriage and my family, like my wife and my relationship with my wife, because I think I've heard it so many times from older people that have been successful in their careers for decades, whatever it is. It's like, at the end of the day, like, the family is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So everything else around that, obviously, I think everything is a venue through which to carry out my purpose. I honestly don't even, like, I don't know, and maybe this will change. I don't know how much time I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, like, success in the sense of my career accomplishments.
Okay.
Which is maybe as I amass more, I will, but
Yeah.
I just think of them as, like, I'm grateful for each and every, like, opportunity along this journey.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like you have thought about, has it always been that way, success measure wise? Because I've realized throughout the different stages of my, you know, life, purpose, career, there are some success measures that are not the same. I've had to adjust those. There are some success measures that are still there, like that's the goal. The weight of them happening, or of them happening how I thought they were going to come, is different. Is that how is that for you?
Well, I think that a big part of the way that I live, like, I think I've recognized this maybe in the early stages of my relationship with Elaine, because there are ways in which with me and my wife, we're just different, and we look at success different. We look at, and we move a little bit differently in terms of pushing for certain things to happen.
Yeah.
And I recognize that a lot of that is just, like, innately how you were born. Like, God created each of us to move in this world a specific way. And so I've never had a super, like, strong attachment to what's going to happen in the future and hitting certain benchmarks. Honestly, I've been like, I know the next thing that I feel like needs to happen, and I have the sort of, like, a big overarching vision of of the direction I'm going in, the space in which I want to be successful. But for me, I've always been kind of detached from certain parts of the world's measure of success, and that has nothing to do with me. I don't feel like it. I feel like it has a lot to do with how I was created, honestly.
Yeah.
And yes, I've nurtured it, and I've
It wasn't something you consciously said, this is what the world thinks, I'm gonna do it this way.
No, I mean, I think that there are probably times when I've done that, but I think God has, like, created me to be someone who is somewhat detached from those things. And I think that He's created other people to be not necessarily attached, but to have more in their mind about, like, these are goals that you want to hit and benchmarks that the world measures things by, move towards those. And I feel like I can learn some things from those people that move that way, just as I think I'm here for others to learn certain things from the way I move.
And it's that culture right now is so judgmental. If you don't do it this way, if you don't think this way.
Yeah.
And in reality, I like what you just said. God has created all of us in different ways.
Yeah.
So the goal would be not to judge, but let me listen to understand. I understand culture's loud right now. Culture's judgmental right now. You need to have an opinion, but really, you can learn from anybody, especially if they're different.
Yeah.
Right? It sounds like you've done some deep thought on this next question. But one of the things I think is powerful is talking about the things that we speaking of the world, we love to talk about strength. We love to give highlight reels of what we're doing. But I think there's power in talking about the whole picture of that. So my question to you is, what's one of your greatest failures in your life? Could be career, family, could be relationships. And why was it your greatest failure?
I think one of my greatest failures, something that I probably carried some shame around for a while, was the way that I left my last corporate job. And I just was not, I wasn't present like I should have been. And I didn't do the work. I didn't do what I was like, and this is not in totality. There are ways in which certain people, certain teams, certain aspects of my job, I was killing it.
Right.
And then there were certain areas that I was hiding from the fact that I was not equipped. I didn't ask for help when I needed it out of pride. I allowed balls to drop again out of the same pride. As opposed to asking for help, I was trying to do it myself in a way that, in an area that I just didn't have those gifts.
Yeah.
And because I was always doing well in school, and I usually was able to get by based on just either winging it or whatever. My way of working and my way of moving was not working anymore.
Yeah.
But I was too prideful to speak up and say something hey, I need help here, I need assistance here. And so I let balls drop, and then they put me on a performance plan, and that was the first time anything like that had ever happened to me. Again, always doing well in school, always doing well in my trajectory, and I just hit a point where I wasn't performing, and it was a shameful period of time for me.
Yeah.
And when I left, I had the audacity so they put me on a performance plan. I'll just get real with it. They put me on a performance plan. And then I decided, and then I was all right, boom, I'm gonna kick it into gear. And I started doing a lot better, because I just, it wasn't that I couldn't do better.
Yeah.
I was having trouble finding the motivation.
Yeah.
And I was in the wrong place. It wasn't the job for me. It wasn't something that actually was aligned with my gifts, my talents, and my interests. But still, I was there, and I had a job to do.
Right.
So if I'm gonna be honorable, if I'm gonna have the character of God, I should have been doing my job.
Right.
And then when I left, I got some counsel from the wrong people, and they were well, I was deciding to quit. They're well, can you stay on for a few months to help us transition, et cetera, et cetera. And then I had the audacity, with some, outside guidance, but I had the audacity to then turn around and try to ask them to pay me as a consultant to stay on, or I wasn't gonna do it. And it was just it's bro, you were just on a performance plan a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
What kind of arrogance?
Yeah, I get it.
So just professional immaturity.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize it until, maybe years down the road, where I was dang, I would have handled that situation so different.
Yeah.
So that's a big failure in my mind.
Why was it your greatest?
I think it just highlighted a lot of different, a lot of places in my life where I really needed to grow, around discipline, procrastination, asking for help, how my pride was blocking me from asking for help, and just commitment, and just certain parts of my character that I'm you need to do what you say you're gonna do, follow through, and there's really no excuse. Dropping balls in that way that cannot be, whatever ways you think you might be godly, or have the character of God, like that's not it.
Yeah.
So you cannot see yourself as honest, good, whatever other words that people might throw my way, because like people, I'm a nice guy. I do generally treat people really well, but like I can't get so caught up in that when over here in this area of my life, I'm severely falling short.
Yeah.
So I think that was the beginning of me taking an even deeper like examination of who I am and becoming more humble.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's funny you say that. You've touched on it a bit, but I want to be a bit more clear about it. Weakness. We all have them. We're human, but I think culture has really taught us the definition of mental toughness is how can I focus on my strengths and just not pay attention to the areas I'm weak in. Now, from a strategy perspective, that's not smart. You at least have to be accountable or know the weaknesses you have in your life to at least account for them, right?
Yeah.
What are the weaknesses, personal weaknesses you may have had that you know, if I don't at least account for these, they have the ability to jeopardize every part of my life?
Yeah. We've got a few.
We all do.
Avoidance is one. Like, I mean, and it kind of goes what you're speaking about. Like, I can have what I kind of just said, but I can have all these things going well, and I'll avoid looking at or talking or bringing up or addressing the areas that are not going well. So that's like the overarching thing, and then underneath that is like, because usually what I'm avoiding is those weaknesses.
Yeah.
And those weaknesses include procrastination. They include, there's something around like a fear of finishing or a like, and I think it comes from fear of judgment. I think it comes from me being good at things, like, and praised for being good at things all my life. Eric Thomas, I was listening. He's this thing. ET said something where he was like, I think he's talking to some football players in college or something, and he's like, "You've been praised since high school. Like you've been tall since high school. You've been X, Y, Z." And I was like, there are ways in which people have always said, "Oh, I'm so smart. I'm so this. I'm so that," since I was very young.
Yeah.
And so I took that on as part of my identity of like, and then I was, captain of a basketball team, starting point guard, all that, and I sang the national anthem before I played. So like, I was kind of the guy, young, and in that you start thinking. So one, that becomes part of your identity, and then for me, I took that on. It was like, well, I can kind of coast because I'm naturally gifted in certain things, and another weakness is like consistently like working hard.
Yeah.
Like as an MO. Yeah. And I go for, and it's also against your own capacity, right? It's like, I know what my capacity is. I may work hard compared to the next guy, but like, am I really like maxing out my capacity?
Yeah.
And I go through seasons when I do, and I go through seasons when I don't. And it's something I'm still like working on, is like consistently like pushing that edge. And this season I'm in right now has kind of forced me to, in a way that I'm so grateful for, like relentlessly push that edge. Yeah,
you mentioned a word that I think a lot of us in culture are dealing with, trying to find, solidify. What is your identity? Where do you pull that from? Because I feel like once somebody has their identity, there's a level of peace. Not to say that there's not work to be done or consistently done, but once you find your identity, you can start. I think there's a level of peace that's in that. Where do you find yours?
Yeah, I think identity is a hard question.
So I asked it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to hold and like grasp in a like over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's been helpful to kind of simplify it to like things outside of this earth, right? It's like, all right, I'm a spiritual being.
Yeah.
And also I think identity is really, like, you can't really talk about identity without having some sort of belief in context. Like, what context do you exist in? And then that can like help inform your identity. So for me, I just firmly believe like this is it's all spiritual. This is a physical manifestation. I have this physical body, but I'm spirit. You are spirit, and we are connected. God is in us, through us, all around us. And so with that context, and also God is love and God loves us. So I am love as God flows through me. We are like held up by love. And so that context would sound super like outside of this world, which it is, but that context I feel like helps me then when I'm walking through any challenge in life, like remember like, okay, what is this difficulty? It's a classroom. It's a teacher to help grow and transform my spirit and continue to grow me from where I am to be more and more like God.
Yeah.
That's what like everything is. So that's the context of everything. So in that, I'm like, I'm spirit, and I am literally everything I'm going through is it's to help me become more like God. Yeah. And what that shapes to practically is like, I've written down certain words, like I'm a lover. So like I'm called to love. I anybody that I engage with, like that is, I should be engaging with them with love, seeing them through the lens of love, seeing them also through the lens of divinity and seeing the divinity in them as well.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I mean, there's the things that are more practical. I'm a husband. I'm a creative. I'm a musician. And these are all like more like the venues through which I do the like spirit love thing.
My next question is, have you had the time to solidify that or to know what my purpose on this earth is? Why did God create Jonathan Singletary?
Yeah, I do think my purpose is to love. And it's like hard for me to even, when I say it, I'm like, oh, people are gonna hear that and be like, bro, what does that even, like that doesn't even mean anything. And it doesn't need to mean anything to anybody except for me.
Yeah.
And I think that like I love through my music, because I think my purpose in music and the way that my purpose shows up in music is like, I'm called to help people feel love through my music, to feel more seen, to it's called to bring more empathy into this world. If I'm telling stories about what it's been like for me growing up as a Black man in this country, or if I'm telling somebody else's story, or if I'm talking about love in a way that maybe men generally don't talk about love, like all of that still is a way of bring love into this earth, which in my definition is like doing whatever I'm called to do to help others get closer to God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, purpose, I think we hear purpose and you go, oh, is that your career? Purpose seems to be who you are that should flow through everything you have. This is my purpose. It should flow through my marriage. It should flow through my relationship with my children.
Yeah.
It should flow through my career. I can definitely, when I look at you started the social series Piano and Prayer. That is nothing but content about love, using your gifts to express that.
Yeah.
So that's good, man. Any last words? Where are you at? What? I should ask you this. Why do you do what you do? Why are you an artist? For somebody watching this who's thinking about, why should I do something? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of the answers that I gave about love, like we talked about love and bringing empathy and whatnot through music, like those are real. But also, I think that it's just what God created me to do. Like I chose it in some ways, but even those choices and those turning points away from science and tech were kind of like, they felt like they were hard decisions, but they were also no-brainers. Just like, I have this thing inside me. It is a gift. It is a love. It is what I am passionate about. And I knew that I would not feel fulfilled as a human being. I knew that I would not feel alive fully, which would result in me not being able to have full relationships in my romantic life would just result in me not being able to give authentically of who I am, my whole self, to any future children that I would have. Like I saw this vision of me as a science, business development, something, tech something. And I was like, that guy's not gonna be happy. That guy's not gonna be able to authentically tell his child or his children to like chase their dreams or go after their passion or how to navigate a faith journey if I play it safe.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do what I do, because it was given to me, and in a moment, I saw it, what it was. It was a gift, it was my purpose. And once you see it, once you've been given it as like, this is who you are, this is what I've given you, like you kind of have no other choice but to be like, all right, I guess that's who I am. I have no idea how this is gonna pan out, but I'm doing it. So
I was gonna ask you to encourage somebody, but I'm gonna take that, ask if anybody else is out there, lean into what that pull that they have.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, brother.
Man, this is beautiful.
Thank you,
I
Jeff.
appreciate being
yes,
here.
Yes, sir. I'm with it.
Thank you, bro.